we still on the eve. I don't want to say the eve, but we're still in the 50th year of hip hop.
Right, correct.
So, well, 2 podcasts ago, we gave a lot of flowers to Nas. We talked Nas up for
Right.
what he did, for his tremendous impact.
Yes.
I want to go to another legendary figure in our culture that deserves their flowers this episode.
Okay.
He announced a few days ago that he's dropping an album November 24th, a day before my birthday, which is being executive produced by Timberland, Swizz Beats, and Pharrell. The one, the only from Brooklyn, Busta Rhymes, man.
Yes, sir.
I thought it was very important to give Busta Rhymes his just due within our culture.
Facts.
As us in the media, I know magazine purists and hip hop purists give him his flowers, but you don't hear his name floating around too much in the industry as being like a top 5 rapper.
Which he is.
And we're gonna go there in this segment talking about Busta Rhymes. And the reason why I want to overly do it, like give him his stamp, give him all the accolades, because I think we need to do that while these hip hop artists are here with us, while they're still young, while they're still successful, before they get old and quit. Like, he's here now. We need to celebrate Busta Rhymes now. Busta Rhymes has rapped through, I think my research, 5 different decades. He rapped through the 80s. He rapped in the early 90s, because according to them, that's when they started the group when he was a teenager. He started the group with his friends in Long Island in the late 80s, early 90s. So you got the 80s decade, you got the early 90s when we heard of him, you got the early 2000s, you got the 2010s, and then you got the 2020s. So technically, that's 5 different decades. I'm not saying 50 years. I'm saying he rapped through 5 different decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Facts.
I'm going to turn it over to you. And the reason why I'm going to turn it over to you is because I feel like you got a chance to be boots on the ground, growing up in that environment. You going to school in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You living through the golden era of hip hop.
Yeah.
So one question I have for you, being that you grew up in the environment in Brooklyn and got to enjoy that era, that prime, what ways did Busta Rhymes stick out amongst all the artists during that golden era in the early 90s?
And when he first came out, like before I went back to BK, he always like was like Sticky Fingers from Onyx.
Okay.
Like he always like anticipated his part. Like out of every song, he always anticipated his part. You know, and then when he was kind of shining out of the whole group, like Leaders of the New was Illmatic, all of them were, but he just got outshined the whole group with his flow and the way he came.
Can I cut in just a tad bit?
Yeah.
Do you think that came when he was featured on Scenario?
Yeah, that was his coming out party. I mean, for real hip hop heads, we already knew how ill he was, but Scenario introduced him to the world, because that single alone like was like everywhere. That single propelled. Then the remix when he did was even crazier. So I mean, once that happened, then Elektra said, "Yo, we kind of see what this guy can do. Let's sign him to a solo deal," and he did his thing, and he never looked back after that, which is crazy. But he's after that, and you got to remember when he came, I think that was what 95, 94 when he did the solo album.
Oh yeah, solo album.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
the singles came early 90s.
Before that, right? Yeah, he did The Coming, and it was crazy. Like every album he's had his formula. It's always been like, I don't want to say radio friendly hits he's had, but then he also has the stuff like that's the street that the hip hop heads can respect. If you go listen to every album, I don't think he's had one bad album. I think maybe there was one album that was so-so, and it wasn't even so-so. It just wasn't really pushed right. It was like, I think his last album on Elektra.
Okay.
But otherwise in that, Busta, and then you gotta remember too, what we was talking about with Nas. Unlike Nas, he kind of propelled the Flip Mode Squad. Everybody didn't come out of the Flip Mode Squad, but you had Rod Digger, who didn't have, no disrespect to these other females, but like wasn't over sexualized. she was just an illmatic female rapper that at the end of the day, you didn't even look at her as a female. You just looked at her as an ill rapper. Like, she was that ill. And she went gold. You understand what I'm saying? So her album went gold. Rampage, his cousin, his album went gold. Flip Mode went gold. Flip Mode did big things with their album. So just to say, I mean, that's just how ill he had. He had an ill crew. And he came out of an ill crew from Leaders in the New School, solidified himself as an illmatic artist, then brought a crew along and solidified them as, like, Flip Mode will go down in history as an ill crew in hip hop, right? And then, I mean, he's like you said, he survived every era. He survived from coming out, I mean, when the East Coast was rocking. He survived even when the South was popping. He survived when the albums weren't selling, the DVD era was going on. He survived. He even dropped probably a classic album with the COVID era. He's done everything.
Pandemic Busta Rhymes was going in.
Oh my God, that album was ilmatic. It was probably a 9.5 on a Richter scale.
Extension level event number 2, The Wrath of God.
And the only reason I don't think it even got over the way it was supposed to get over was because of the it's the COVID.
Pandemic. You couldn't travel.
Yeah. That was insane. And he's, what people don't talk about now, he's on tour with 50 Cent. And I mean, he's got a catalog. When we was talking about this before, he has a catalog so long. I mean, they don't have enough time for him to do a catalog like that.
Now, one thing I also want to bring up, I think some of the younger cats might forget, not us, but outside of his catalog, he's been in heavy in with the films. He doesn't get enough credit as an actor.
Good point.
This is why I'm saying Busta Rhymes is in uncharted territory. The only other artist that would be worthy in hip hop mentioning with him obviously is Jay-Z and Nas.
Yeah.
And it's no disrespect to the other ones.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about album sales.
Correct.
I'm talking about the global impact Busta Rhymes has had on hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Dude rap through 5 different decades in hip hop.
Facts.
Shined on some of the biggest verses as you brought up. And then did great. See, we attribute that to Tupac. Rightfully so. Tupac did his thing in films. But who other than Busta Rhymes did they thing in film as hip hop artists? Yeah, we had LL Cool J with that.
Oh yeah. I don't know.
But check Busta Rhymes' film credit.
The Higher Learning. Let me see, Shaft. When Samuel Jackson did it.
I didn't know he was in a Rugrat movie.
Where he was in the right? I didn't even know that.
1998.
Halloween, Michael Myers, and he survived it, which is very rare for black people in a horror movie.
A movie called Strap before Higher Learning.
Yeah, I remember that.
So he has just as long as a filmography catalog than he does with his discography and music. Dude's in uncharted territory. And saying all that, with us giving him his flowers and recognizing him, when we check like the websites like Billboard and Complex, and when they come out with their lists, because it's their journalists that whatever, why do we not see Busta inching close within that 5 or 6 top artists of all time?
Oh, that's a good question. I think he's always done it independently, and that's not a shot at anybody else. I mean, 50 had G Unit, and I think G Unit went to Excel, J, Rockefeller. But Busta's never really, not that he needed to be, but he's never been part of that movement. He was never involved. Like when it was Bring Back the East Coast, he wasn't part of that. That was Nas, Biggie, Wu-Tang, all of them. He was part of it. I mean, he came out with some dope music, but he just never been part of that whole conglomerate. You get what I'm saying? Like he's always stood alone and always did his own thing. Yeah. He's always just stood alone and done his own thing. I think he doesn't get enough credit, and I think he's always been in some. It ain't always been great label deals. I mean, he went to Elektra. That was a good deal from the outside looking in. But I mean, J Records wasn't the perfect place. He did one album on Aftermath, which was dope. But he's never really been part of that. Like had a team of a movement. Even when he had Flip Mode, Flip Mode, but got so far. You know what I mean? It was crazy because it's like, I really think if he kept pushing Flip Mode, he would have been solidified as Definitely. Not that he's not now, but he's just, I don't know. I don't understand why. I think
I know some of
that's
these
why
lists could be a little biased with the
Yeah.
journalists,
Yeah.
but I think there's some truth to what you're saying with that.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, I think, as I said last time, some of these lists from my end has to be refreshed. Has to be refreshed as we keep moving along, as hip hop keeps growing, because these guys are updating their catalog. Like I said with Nas, now he's coming out with an album. This is after people forget just a few months ago, or not too long ago, he put out a collab single, or he was featured on a single with Coi Leray. So he's still remaining relevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, Coi Leray is becoming one of the hottest, I don't want to say pop, but I'll give her the hip hop label, hip hop / pop stars of the young generation. And Busta Rhymes figured out a way how to collab and make a hot record with her.
Right.
So he still knows how to make records at his age in this era.
Right.
And now you're giving him Timberland, Swiss Beats, and freaking Pharrell. What is your expectations for this album with those producers that I just named?
Pure classic. It has to be classic. It has to be at least on a scale of 1 to 10, it has to be 9.7. Like, they only be a 0.3 of a bad situation or a bad song or bad hook or something like that. But knowing Busta, I don't think he's never not dropped anything that like, oh God, I gotta, this ain't gonna work. Like, he's been the only thing he ever did that I was kind of looking like I ain't like that song. What was that? Get out of here, like that. I
Get out.
Yeah.
Get out.
That didn't stick with me.
It didn't stick, but it was still catchy.
Yeah. I think that was that album. That was the album that was,
okay.
But I otherwise in that these always drop albums that have been 9 or better. Always 9 or better. And that's saying a lot. And you gotta remember, he come from Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, all of them. He comes from that camp. That's where Leaders of New School really comes from, that camp. So now fast forward, he's in an era with Biggie and Nas and them and Jay and all around them. And then on top of that, fast forward, he's like Dolo with the Flip Mode Squad. This is when Jay and Rockefeller was blowing, and he had Flip Mode Squad relevant, and he was relevant himself. And then you fast forward past that, and you're just seeing like every music going down south, and he's still making himself relevant. Go listen to Cal's records; he's on them, original and remixes. So
I also want to give him some credit. And Busta has talked about this. If you could read between the lines of what I'm about to say. He doesn't get a lot of credit for being super conscious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
For coming from the 5%ers.
Yeah.
Like, I was listening to the first on Scenario, and it was just a bar that he said real quick, and you have to be from a certain culture. He said something about eating idol soup. Now, to some people that might fly over your head if you're not Jamaican or come from Jamaican descent.
Yeah.
But if you understand what if you understand what eating idol is, it means eating pure food of the earth, not adding anything extra. He was talking like that back in 92. As a young teen or a 20-year-old. Then coming from where he comes from and kicking that knowledge, like he sneaks it in there. He doesn't get a lot of credit for that.
Some people say, like, it was his voice or whatever. Sticky Fingers had a very distinct voice, and Sticky Fingers was an ill artist. I think he never gets any real credit either. Okay. Right? But I mean, when you talk about Busta, I mean, even he can do that fast flow. He can slow it down. I mean, just think
baritone
about it.
Voice.
Yeah, he can do all of it. There's nothing he can't do. So I mean, is it the God MC? He's one of the God MCs, like how Rakim is the God MC. He's one of them. You know what I'm saying? So Busta has solidified everything. I mean, he has nothing left. And you know what else? Let me also say this. He's like a ill performer on stage. If you ever seen him on stage, you got to go see him on stage.
And this is what we talked about when we got that clip that went viral a few months ago, where we talked about the old school rappers versus the new rappers and what do we like to see improved on. And we touched on the show. If you guys go up on our TikTok or wherever it's at, we talked about how some of these rappers can't perform, how they're pulling back shows because they're not selling out concerts the way they used to. but 50 Cent and Busta Rhymes can. And then when you see the clips, because you went to the show live, not going to say what state, but you went live, and you told me how ill the show was.
Yep.
Can you just touch on how Busta, at his age, he's healthy, he's in shape, he's bouncing around for an hour. Can you talk about Busta Rhymes' performance?
Yeah, he came out on stage with the belt in his chair. You know what I'm saying? Because I've seen Busta perform at least 3 or 4 different times, and it's always like pure energy. It's like 100% energy. Even like he's doing the whole thing with the mic, and I mean it's if you're like an artist, you gotta go see a Busta Rhymes show. It'll tell you like what you need to be, how you need to perform.
Bring that bar back. Say that again.
Yeah, if you're an artist, you have to go see a Busta Rhymes show. That'll tell you how you need to perform. If you can't perform at that level, then you shouldn't be doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I think Busta is who Busta is, and I mean like not to be funny, but you know DMX is a guy that can do that level. There's only few MCs that can do what Busta does.
DMX.
There's only few MCs. I seen some artists, they just be standing around, or they can't really perform.
He got on 50. He was telling a joke, but he said, "Yeah, 50, you think you could get me with just doing this with your hand movement?"
Yeah.
He said, "You're gonna have to turn up to get Busta Rhymes, man."
And he did. 50. Well, you could tell 50 like went back in the show. He has like a live band.
Okay.
And he has dancers, and Yayo and Murder's in there, and they're doing their thing. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. But Busta, he just kind of sits out there with his catalog with him and Spliff Star. That's a crazy. And I think Jeremiah came on the stage at one point. So Busta is just, I mean, all his, and you know what's crazy? The whole crowd sings his song. I've been at shows where the crowd don't even know what they like. What are you doing? Not with Busta. Whether Busta was on I think he was on the Puff tour. I know he came up to SUNY Albany at one point. He ripped that down.
Okay.
I seen him on a 50 Cent tour. And there was another tour he was on, and I saw him, and he was just ripping it. I mean, what you see in those videos of him doing what he does, that's right on stage. Same energy. It's the same thing. Some artists, you don't see that. You don't see it. They don't do what they're promoting on the TV. You be seen by, yo, this is all you got? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, definitely. But go ahead, though.
Nah, great explanation. With us talking about Busta Rhymes going through the eras that he went through, and you being in that time period in Brooklyn, boots on the ground through your college years and so forth, give me one of your favorite Busta moments.
What I seen in person or
music in general? This is a time period he's like, yo, Busta got this.
I remember when I was down there in New York, and I remember this was the year. This is when Jay's Hard Knock Life album came out, the whatever volume 2, whatever you want to call it. And I remember he had the Flip Mode Squad. And I remember that album came out, and I never had heard nothing like that before. Him and DJ Scratch. Scratch was doing most of the production on that. But I remember he had released it, and it was just, hit after hit, single after single. I'm still kind of pissed because let me tell you a story. Like one day, back then, for people that don't know, because it's now digital era now, there used to be a thing called street teams.
Yep.
So
Talk about it.
Busta Rhymes had Flip Mode Squad had to do a sign up in the Bronx. I remember everybody was out there. Everybody was outside. They were supposed to be there like around, I don't know. I remember we went up there. I was part of like the Loud SRC street team. I was assistant, with that. And Busta Rhymes had went out. He was supposed to, him and Flip Mode was supposed to come. I don't know. I think we left him around like 6 o'clock, man. We just couldn't wait no more. Like they didn't show up. But we would thought the whole Bronx was outside, just waiting to see those guys. So just to say, I guess the point of the reason why I love that is that I think that's when I started seeing him. I started looking at him in a different light. You know what I'm saying? Like a top MC, he was on popping, and he had the Flip Mode Squad popping. But I think his highlight to me is when he joined Aftermath, and when he finally he had Scratch already, but when he joined, when he got Dr. Dre behind him, it was, oh my God. Those are the 2 times when I saw Busta, and I was like, yeah, he got the belt. He's definitely got the belt. and he was shining months or months, and that was the time of 50's at his peak, Eminem's at his peak, and they all rocking.
Would it be fair if this album comes out in November 24th, executive produced by Swiss Beats, Pharrell, and Timbaland, and he knocks it out the park? Would it be fair to now put Busta Rhymes in the overall top 5 of all time?
Yep. Facts.
Because I think people have lists with eras, and I get those lists, like the top 5 of the eras, but I think there's a cross-generational list.
Aside from the street stuff, I'm going to leave that alone because I don't like talking about people's business. Aside from the street stuff, you ever notice nobody ever want to battle him? Whoever really wanted to battle him? Name one person that really wanted to battle. I don't care what Jay said, he didn't want that smoke. That might have been one he might have been thinking about.
That's an interesting point.
I know I heard the story about they was in high school when Jay beat him, but let's be honest, man. You really want to? How come nobody's ever done a versus against Busta? Who really wants to do that?
I told people what would be a good versus. This is when people said nobody wants to do a versus Eminem. I thought from a stylistic, I thought both of them would go at it stylistically. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a great verse. Busta Rhymes versus Eminem. It would be a classic.
Yep.
Because their style of rhyming.
Right. So I don't know what, like, I know it's nobody ever goes after him lyrically. Nobody. I don't know one person. I think Ja Rule, that was when he signed the Aftermath, and we all know what that was. But I mean, nobody ever lyrically wants to challenge Busta. Not one person. Not one. Side note too, him and MOP just need to stop and make an album together. I don't know why they just keep playing games like this.
You hit that one out of left field.
Yeah, they need to just make an album together. I don't know.
You got a couple minutes going on that.
They always if you heard Annie Up remix, they did that. Then they did another joint, and they also did the one on ELE 2. They did the original version, and then they did a remix. I mean, it's just. I mean, Busta is just. I mean, him and MOP, every time they get together, it's like what Vodka and Milk was Prodigy saying. It's just always off the chain, man. It's always like a top level. You know what I'm saying? Like it's never a disappointment.
Okay.
Never a disappointment. You know what I mean?
Busta Rhymes, MOP. Can we get a collab album after you drop this hotness, November 24th? Can we get an MOP Busta Rhymes album?
Come on, man. Put it on the bucket list, Bus.
Please, for hip hop.
Just put it on the bucket list.
We need that.
We definitely need that.
MOP, Busta Rhymes.
We need it as bad as when the Lox and Dipset did the verses, man. It kind of reminded us what New York is. New York really was, and it really is. Because I think we forgot who we were.
Now let me put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. If they did that album, excuse me. If we got the Busta Rhymes MOP collab album that we're just throwing in the universe, who should produce it?
Oh boy, Scratch is gotta be on there clearly. Scratch, because he has a perfect chemistry with him. Is it more than one producer?
They could.
Okay, Scratch, Dr. Dre, Hit Boy.
Oh yeah.
If I gotta do one more, Heat Makers.
Uh-oh. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think those four
Heat
guys.
Makers, MOP, and Busta Rhymes record.
Yeah. Those would be the four producers I would do.
So Enveonline is pitting out in the hip hop universe. Please Busta, please MOP.
Yeah.
If you guys have time outside of touring, see if y'all can do a collab album for hip hop, man.
Right.
That's dope.
Yeah.